Hey YouTube, this is Mafia306, and today we're going to be talking about March Madness and bracketology. I want to apologize in advance that I do not know how to put up graphics on YouTube videos, and to be quite honest, I'm too lazy to learn. But I want to go on ahead and give you some tips on how to better your brackets. I think 3 or 4 years ago, I got 178 out of 192 points, and I've always been number one in my pool, which has consisted of anywhere from 12 to about 70 or 80 people. So with that said, let's jump right on into it. I'm going to be holding up the brackets with my picks. If you can't see it, I really apologize, but you should be able to figure out what's going on just by listening to what I'm saying. This is just more of an aid up here. So let's go ahead and get right up into it. Looking at the Midwest bracket, Louisville, number one seed overall in the tournament. Should be a lock for your pick there, almost 100% chance of winning. As a matter of fact, the number one seed has never lost to a number 16 seed in the NCAA men's tournament. It's happened in the women's tournament, has not happened in the men's tournament, so you've got to figure Louisville's going to move on here, no problem. Next matchup, Colorado State and Missouri, 8 and 9. A lot of people feel like it's a coin flip or a toss-up to see who's gonna be the winner there, who's gonna come out on top. But you have to ask yourself, who's been playing better basketball lately? Excuse me. Answer is Missouri. Sorry, Colorado State fans, but Missouri's just been playing better basketball lately. I think Missouri's going to come out of there with the win. Oklahoma State and Oregon is number 5 and number 12. Number 5 and number 12, a lot of people pick the number 12 over 5 upset as their sexy upset pick. And from a statistical point of view, a 12 seed has upset a number 5 seed in 24 of the last 27 NCAA tournaments. But you can't just blindly pick that upset. You have to have a reason for it. Reasoning is number 12 Oregon beat number 6 UCLA in the Pac-10 or Pac-12, whatever it is, conference. I admit I haven't seen much Oklahoma State Cowboy basketball this year, but just based on the fact that Oregon won the conference and beat UCLA, I have to give the nod to Oregon in this game. I have to pick them with the upset. So number 12 Oregon upsetting Oklahoma State and moving on. Next matchup, number 4 St. Louis, New Mexico State. Should be almost a no-brainer. St. Louis moving on. Next round, Memphis over St. Mary's. Wound up being St. Mary's to win that game. Memphis, one of the most athletic teams in the tournament. I think St. Mary's is just going to be no match for them. Some people were possibly thinking about picking the upset, but I really can't see Memphis losing to St. Mary's, so Memphis getting the nod to move on to the next round there. Next matchup, number 3 Michigan State over number 14 Valparaiso. Michigan State is just too strong. Sorry Valp fans, but Michigan State pretty much going to walk through this game, no questions asked. Probably going to win by about 25 points, if not more. Next matchup, number 7 Creighton and Cincinnati. A lot of people thinking Cincinnati might upset them coming out with the win, and statistically speaking, you do have a 10 upsetting a 7 seed in 40% of the time. But again, you have to have a reason for it. You can't just blindly pick the upset. And I really don't think the Bearcats are better than Creighton this year, so I've got to give the nod to Creighton. Creighton moving on to the next round. And last in this bracket, Duke and Albany. Duke avoiding the similar meltdown that they had. It was either last year or the year before, I don't remember. But they will beat number 15 Albany and move on to the next round. So next round we've got Louisville and Missouri. You got to ask yourself, who's the better team? Louisville, number 1 seed overall. Missouri is good, but Louisville is just better. So Louisville will be moving on to the Sweet 16. Next round, Oregon and St. Louis. I fought over this game over and over and over again. I originally picked Oregon to upset number 4 St. Louis and move into the Sweet 16. Statistically speaking, you do have one or two 10-plus teams in the Sweet 16. Oregon at number 12. I keep going back and forth between it. I'm still on the fence about it, but I think St. Louis has been playing a little bit better. I think they're a little bit better team. So I'm giving the nod to St. Louis here to move on to the Sweet 16. Number 4 St. Louis over number 12 Oregon. Rest of this bracket, Michigan State and Memphis. Again, Michigan State is just better than Memphis, so Michigan State moving on. And Duke, better team over Creighton. Duke moving on. Number 1 seed Louisville versus number 4 seed St. Louis. Again, got to go with the number 1 overall seed. Louisville moving on to the Elite Eight. Interesting matchup here, Michigan State and Duke. A lot of people think Duke should be a number 1 seed, and rightly so. They had a tough schedule this year. They've got a good win-loss ratio, but the same can be said for Michigan State. And you've got to ask, who's been playing better basketball lately? Duke, early exit from the ACC tournament. Michigan State, exiting the Big Ten tournament mid-range, midway through the tournament. So Michigan State got further. I've got to give the nod to Michigan State. So Michigan State beating Duke and going on to the Elite Eight. And in the finals of this bracket, number 1 Louisville, number 3 Michigan State. Again, both teams are great teams. The Spartans and the Cardinals, great teams. But I think Louisville's just a little bit better this year. So Louisville getting the nod to come out of that bracket and go to the Final Four. Coming down here into the West Division, number 1 seed Gonzaga, ranked number 1 in the RPI rankings this year, 31-2 record, but a weak strength of schedule. However, they do deserve that number 1 seed. Going up against Southern, you got to go with number 1 Gonzaga there. Next round, Pittsburgh and Wichita State, number 8 and 9. Again, you might think it's just a straight coin flip, but it's not. Pittsburgh, one of those teams shafted when it came to the rankings. Pittsburgh, much more likely a 4 or a 5 seed. Got to give the nod to Pittsburgh moving on. So Pittsburgh over Wichita State. Here, Wisconsin and Ole Miss, 5 and 12. Ole Miss won the SEC tournament, but Wisconsin, runners-up in the Big Ten tournament. Wisconsin is the better team. Wisconsin will be beating Ole Miss moving on. Number 4 Kansas State over number 13 LaSalle. Number 4 Kansas State will be moving on. They're just too good. This game's in Kansas City. Big hometown crowd for Kansas State. They will be moving on. Arizona and Belmont, interesting matchup, 11 and 6. The 11 seed upsets the 6 seed, I think, 33% of the time. So you've got to think possibly one or more of these games you're going to have a number 11 seed upsetting a number 6. And it's going to be right here, Arizona and Belmont. Belmont as a number 15 seed upset a number 2 seed. Last year, the year before, it was either Duke or Georgetown. I don't remember which one. I think they do the same thing this year. They've got a better record than Arizona. They've got a tougher strength of schedule. I think Belmont, number 11 seed, upsets number 6 Arizona and moves on. Number 3 New Mexico over number 11 Harvard. That's easy. Notre Dame and Iowa State. Again, you've got to ask yourself, who's the better team? You've got to look at the statistics. You can't just look at the records, or the rankings rather. Iowa State clearly the better team when you get down to the statistics, points scored, points against, etc. So Iowa State likely wins a close one, comes out over Notre Dame. Ohio State and Iona. Ohio State clearly the better team. I'm going to try to rush through this. I know this is getting lengthy. Next round, Gonzaga and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a great team, but Gonzaga is better this year. Gonzaga is going to come out on top and move into the Sweet 16. Down here, you've got Wisconsin and Kansas State. Another matchup I was really on the fence about. I think Wisconsin is the better team, but Kansas State is going to have that hometown crowd behind them. I think the crowd is going to give Kansas State enough momentum. I think Kansas State's going to come out on top. So Kansas State coming out over Wisconsin. I know I have 5 here for Wisconsin. I'm changing that. I'm saying Kansas State is going to beat Wisconsin and move into the Sweet 16. Next matchup, New Mexico and Belmont. Belmont is a good team. They're going to upset number 6. They're not going to be able to pull off the upset twice. New Mexico moving on. Same thing with Iowa State and Ohio State. Ohio State is just simply the better team. They get the nod to move into the Sweet 16. So here, in the top half of this bracket, you've got number 1 Gonzaga, number 4 Kansas State. Gonzaga, if Wisconsin wins the matchup against Kansas State, Wisconsin is going to beat Gonzaga. If Kansas State wins against Wisconsin, Gonzaga is going to beat Kansas State. So the way that I have it, I've got Gonzaga over Kansas State, Gonzaga moving into the Elite Eight, and here New Mexico and Ohio State. I think Ohio State is just the better team. They won the Big Ten tournament over Wisconsin, so Ohio State getting the nod over New Mexico, which leaves us number 1 Gonzaga and number 2 Ohio State in the finals of that bracket. Again, who's the better team? Gonzaga's ranked higher, but Ohio State much tougher strength of schedule. I've got Ohio State coming out on top and upsetting number 1 Gonzaga, and Ohio State moving into the Final Four from that bracket. So now in the South bracket here, just going to rush through this. Kansas over Western Kentucky should be automatic. North Carolina Villanova. A lot of people would look at that and say it's a toss-up, 8 and 9. But the truth is, North Carolina is the much better team. So North Carolina likely running away with that game and moving on. VCU over Akron. VCU the better team there. Same thing with Michigan over South Dakota State. UCLA and Minnesota. You've got to look at it. UCLA, who's been playing better basketball lately? Minnesota made an early exit from their tournament, but UCLA lost to Oregon, number 12 seed. Minnesota, number 11 seed. Minnesota has been playing decent basketball lately, minus their conference tournament appearance. Giving the nod to Minnesota Gophers coming out on top of the UCLA Bruins, number 11 over number 6 moving on. Florida is going to win big over Northwestern. San Diego State and Oklahoma, a lot of people might think Oklahoma was going to win this game, but San Diego State has traditionally been, over the last couple of years, a very tough team in the tournament. So giving the nod to San Diego State to move on. Georgetown's going to be all over Florida Gulf Coast, no questions asked. Georgetown moving on. So Georgetown, San Diego State, Georgetown's the better team. Florida over Florida and Minnesota. Minnesota's a good team. Florida is just a much better team. Florida's going to beat Minnesota and move on. In the top half of this bracket here, Michigan and VCU. I think the Wolverines are just better than VCU this year, so Michigan getting the nod. Kansas over North Carolina. North Carolina is a great team. North Carolina would have likely been a nice sleeper pick to go far in the tournament. Unfortunately, they drew Kansas in the second round. Kansas is going to win a tight game and knock off North Carolina in the second round and move on. So in the regional semis, we've got Kansas against Michigan. Both teams are good. I just think the Jayhawks are better than the Wolverines this year. Kansas is going to move on to the Elite Eight. Florida and Georgetown, close matchup. Both teams are very, very good. Both teams have a decent strength of schedule, not tough but not easy. Florida's got a better record than Georgetown, I'm pretty sure. So I'm giving the nod to Florida in this game. I think Florida's going to top Georgetown and move on. And then so that sets up Kansas against Florida for the regional finals. Both teams very, very good. I just think Kansas is a little bit better than Florida. So I've got Kansas coming out of that bracket and moving on to the Final Four. Now in the final bracket, just going to rush through this again. Indiana should win, no questions asked. NC State and Temple, you've got to look at the statistics again. Statistics heavily favor NC State. NC State is going to get the win and move on. UNLV in California, a lot of people picking California. I think UNLV is just simply the better team. I think UNLV is going to move on. Despite this game being in San Jose, I think UNLV is the better team. UNLV is going to advance to the next round. Same thing with Syracuse and Montana. A lot of people picking Montana for the upset. I just don't think it's going to happen, not even given the latest developments coming out of Syracuse regarding their program and their academic and drug issues. I think Syracuse is the better team. Syracuse is going to move on. Butler and Bucknell, a lot of people picking that upset too. I just think Butler's the better team. I think Butler is going to move on and take that game. Marquette and Davidson. Davidson, a very good three-point shooting team, but unfortunately they're not as good as Marquette in terms of overall play. Marquette's probably going to go down early due to the three-point shooting, but Marquette's probably going to come back in the second half and come out on top of the win. Illinois and Colorado, a lot of people picking this upset too, but Illinois is just simply the better team right now, so Illinois is going to come out on top there. And Miami, clearly the better team than Pacific. Next round, Miami over Illinois. Illinois is good, Miami's just better. Miami won the ACC tournament, so probably in all likelihood should have been a number 1 seed, but so Miami clearly the better team there and moving on. Next round, Butler going up against Marquette. I'm going with the upset here. I don't know if a whole lot of other people are. Um, I got laughed at for making this pick, but I just think that Butler's the more athletic team. I think they're the better team than Marquette, and I think they've been the better team lately. So giving the nod to Butler over Marquette, number 6 over number 3 in the second round. Butler moving into the Sweet 16. Next round, UNLV and Syracuse again. This one is almost a gut shot coin flip. But I think UNLV is really good. I don't think they're quite as good as Syracuse. They don't have the experience and the depth that Syracuse has. So going with the orange out of Syracuse there. And Indiana, NC State. The Wolfpack is a good team, but Indiana is just better. Indiana's going to move on there. Sets up Indiana and Syracuse in the next round. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Indiana's going to come out on top. Sets up Miami and Butler down here. Butler, a great team, but Miami, again, is just simply better. Miami's going to come out on top and meet Indiana for the regional finals. This one's going to be a really close game. You got to ask who's been playing better lately. I think Miami's coming off their big ACC tournament win. I'm not too familiar with what Indiana did in their championship tournament, but I don't think they got very far. I think Miami wins a close one, and Miami goes into the Final Four there, upsetting number 1 Indiana. So, Final Four, we've got Ohio State versus Louisville on this side of the bracket. Let me get my finger over there. We've got Louisville versus Ohio State here. Again, both teams really good. The Cardinals and the Buckeyes. I think the Cardinals are just better. So I think Louisville's going to come out on top there. They're the number 1 seed overall. So Louisville going to the championship game. This side of the bracket, you've got number 1 Kansas going up against number 2 Miami. Both teams very, very good. The Hurricanes and the Jayhawks. I just think that Miami's run ends here, and they fall to Kansas in a close game. So Kansas getting the nod over them. Kansas meeting Louisville in the championship game. And unfortunately for the Jayhawks, it looks like it's going to be back-to-back championship losses. I think Louisville is just the better team. I don't think anybody's going to beat Louisville this year. So, 4-year champion, the Louisville Cardinals over the Kansas Jayhawks. And that concludes my bracket picks. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you agree, disagree. Let me know your reasoning behind your picks if you want. And we'll see in a couple of days, at least the start of what happens here. And we'll see what happens. So good luck to everybody in your bracket picks, and let's enjoy the madness.